I collect things because I like tangible things. I grew up in a vacuum of things, just poor people who didn't have passions or hobbies. So when I got older, I overcompensated. Hey, Complex, come check out my collection.
Adam, we're at the National Automobile Museum. 13 cars you have here, Paul Newman's collection. When did you decide you wanted to start the collection?
I grew up pretty poor, and then I worked as a carpenter, and so I had to drive a pickup truck. So I was always very mechanically oriented, and I was, a gearhead. Datsun was a cool hot rodding car, like in the San Fernando Valley, mid-'80s. So I was kind of hip to Datsuns. And then when I got into show business, I made some money. Then at some point, I said, well, I want to get some Datsun race cars. So I started collecting some old vintage Datsun race cars. And they'd go, oh, and by the way, Paul Newman drove this car. And I'd go, oh, that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
I didn't know that's what he did. But no one really cared that much that Paul Newman drove the cars. And they were just kind of old, broken down race cars that need to be fixed up. So at some point, maybe about 2, 3, 4 Newman cars into the mix, I started to realize I think I'm a Paul Newman collector and I'm not really a Datsun collector anymore.
Yeah.
Paul Newman was a Renaissance man, but also a great philanthropist and a great artist. A little bit of a bygone era. He wasn't taking cold plunges and sitting with a therapist or going on an ayahuasca retreat. He was smoking a cigarette and drinking a beer and then kicking ass on a racetrack.
It's funny because the Datsun, I think my dad had one. What can you talk about those cars and how they laid the foundation? Why do you think maybe Paul was so attracted to those?
So when Paul wanted to get into racing, his home track was Lime Rock, which is in the wilds of, it's really tucked up into the hills of Connecticut. So that was where he would race. Datsun caught wind that Paul Newman was in their cars, then they started showing up with bigger cars and more money and sponsorship and stuff like that. So that's sort of how the evolution of Newman and Datsun and Nissan sort of ended up working out.
Besides accruing this collection, how much joy do you get out of the restoration process? Everything that I've heard is that you are super meticulous about that. What can you talk about some of the restoration you've had in this fleet of cars?
So you get as many pictures as you can find.
Yes.
You study all those pictures. You look for all the weird little colors and stuff. Some of them are black and white. It can be a little daunting sometimes. There's a great picture of this car after he won the production championship. He's going around Road Atlanta in it. These are simpler times. There's 7 people in this car. 7.
Wow.
He's driving. There's 3 people stuffed in. His daughter's in this car.
What an Instagram photo that would be in 2025,
people
right?
all hanging out of the side of the car while he's going around Road Atlanta.
Wow.
They would let you anywhere near the track without a fire suit and a helmet, or there'd be so many insurance people up your butt this time. But so you find all the pictures, you study the pictures, and you try to recreate it as best you can. But this one didn't need a full mechanical restoration. It needed paint.
Adam, the holy grail of this collection, 2016, you buy this Porsche 935. What can you tell me about this car?
I had done a film on Newman, a documentary on his racing career. And when I was making the film, a big kind of chapter of the film was Newman goes to Le Mans. So Le Mans is a big race, obviously. Newman going to Le Mans was a big deal. It was a whole chapter for him because he was being hounded by the press, and it really was a weird experience for him to try to do the race. But of course, when I was making the movie, as a collector, I kept looking at the footage we're shooting of Newman climbing into the car at Le Mans, Newman going down the Mulsanne straightaway and stuff, and I was like, oh man, I could get my hands on that car, my God. But I didn't know where it was or who owned it, or these cars could be anywhere in the world.
Yeah.
Maybe a year or two after I finished a doc, it came up for auction, and I was just like, I'm gonna do everything I can to get that car.
You talk about that auction, and I don't want to say you got a good deal on it, but you got a price on it that went up since then, like tremendously. What were you willing to pay for a car like this at that auction?
Well, I mean, I would have been willing to pay a lot.
Okay.
But I didn't really have all the money I needed to get it. So I had to sell some cars and take a loan and so on and so forth.
And you've raced this car. What experience have you had? There's some well-documented experiences in this car, but talk about some of the experiences you've had racing this car.
The last time I drove it, I was at Laguna Seca, and I don't know, turn 5 or something, but I was like on it. I was like, I'm gonna hustle this car around. I had a few friends watching and stuff. I was like into it.
Yeah.
I went around turn 5, and I just got on it, like right out. I didn't straighten out that much, and the thing just kind of leaned out, and then it just snapped. I was going down the track backwards about like 110 miles an hour.
Wow.
I was like, what the hell just happened?
What other ones, though, do you have, I don't want to say a soft spot for, but what ones that maybe don't get the notoriety in this fleet that you love?
Well, I mean, there's Newman's winningest car, which is that 200 SX over there.
Okay.
That's the car he won, I don't know, 22 out of 24 races or something. So it's his winningest car, and it's sort of the humblest car here, just a 4-banger with like 13-inch rims.
Have you let anyone else drive this of like your friends or no? Would you ever? Is it too risky? Or you just talked about Leno. Obviously his car collection's well documented. Has anyone like ever asked you of that?
I don't think Leno's fat ass can fit in this car. The first thing you do when you get in these cars, you go, Jesus, I gotta lose some weight.
Tight here.
It's all like, Paul was like,
okay,
160, 50 pounds, like he was a pixie. No, all these racing seats are like, you're like mashed into them.
It'll humble you a little bit.
It'll humble you a lot. I'm the only one who drives this car, but if Jay wanted to drive it, I would let him drive it. There is one car that I would still like to get my hands on. Paul had a lot of different cars, but he had 4 national championship cars. I have 3 of those national championship cars, and then the 4th is a C production Z car sponsored by Budweiser. It's out there somewhere, and it's been out there for a while, but it's a long, crazy story. But that would put me 4 for 4.
I saw that when we were cutting, you were like, I miss these. How often do you get to see them and talk about like, actually, yes, just missing this collection?
They used to live with me in my warehouse, and then I sold the warehouse and got a different warehouse, and then ran out of room in the warehouse. I used to spend every day with these cars, and on the weekends, I would just show up and sit alone in my warehouse and just drink a beer and just sit and stare at them. So I do miss them.
If you had to put a price on the collection, what do you think it's worth now? Or has it tripled since you bought it?
Race cars are different and weird. These cars, they don't really have comps.
Got it.
It's really hard to estimate what it is minus a comp. Race cars sell, but not Newman, Nissan race cars. I mean, it's millions of dollars. Yeah. I hope it's more. It's more than I paid.
Yes.
Because for most of the cars, no one cared. They were just like, it's Paul Newman's old race car. I mean, they didn't give it to me, but they weren't that expensive because it wasn't really a thing.
Yeah.
Now, vintage racing is bigger than it was. It wasn't so big when I bought a lot of these cars. Newman's watch sold for millions of dollars.
I saw that, the Rolex.
Like that. Yeah. Oh, the watch guys are their own breed, and I wish they cross-pollinated more over to the car guy.
Yeah.
You paid $18 million for that watch? All right, weigh it. How many ounces is that? All right, let's weigh my Newman car.
Exactly.
Now do the math.
Yeah. Didn't they fly the Porsche 935 to set up with that watch?
Yeah, they flew it to New York to put it at the auction house next to the mannequin wearing the watch. Because how else are you going to sell a watch?
Yeah.
You can't have the car. And then later on it flew to Chichester, England. So actually that car's probably flown more than it's driven.
Wow. And then the last question I would say, so much history. Paul Newman, you were early on it. before it was like a thing that the value shot up. What do you think the end game is for this collection in your eyes? Or what would you love to see one day?
Probably a fiery wreck with me in a 935. You're talking about a real ending?
Just go out with the...
Well, that's a good ending.
Okay.
I don't know. Like, you know, I have kids, and I'm sure they'd like this stuff. I like this stuff, and you get a little sentimental, and you do kind of, you know, it sounds corny, but you go, I'm just a custodian. But yeah, I think it's kind of important to restore it and to put it back and to kind of do the archival research. And also to take it out and show it and run it, and people come around and they take pictures.
Yeah.
And a lot of people go, I remember this car from back in the day when I was, you know, up at Road America, and Paul came by and he had this car. You know, like these are good stories. I would hope that whomever was put in charge of these would continue to do that, except for I'm sure they're just going to sell it immediately and it's all going to go up their nose. Sometimes I pinch myself when I see my collection, but you know, the thing about the collection is I didn't walk off a construction site into a Paul Newman collection. I walked off a construction site, got into comedy, and bought one Paul Newman car, and then another Paul Newman car. It's kind of that way with a collection. It's like, yeah, if I'd walked off a construction site and seen that 935, I would have gone out of my mind, but it was all very incremental.
Well, Adam, done so many cool things in your career. I grew up on so many different shows seeing you. I think this collection and your passion for this hobby is one of the coolest things. So really appreciate you sharing the stories and this collection with us.
Thanks, Joe.
Thanks so much, man. Appreciate it.